Hello and welcome to Patashala. In this video, we will discuss the Fiscal Responsibility and Budget Management Act 2003. This is a continuation class of fiscal consolidation for which you can find the link in the description. In the last class, we discussed fiscal consolidation, what made the government work towards fiscal consolidation, the measures taken by the government to get a step closer to fiscal consolidation. Before moving on, please subscribe to Patashala and click the bell icon to not miss out on the upcoming topics. As a part of the steps taken by the government towards fiscal consolidation, after implementing the policy initiatives on reducing the revenue deficits, fiscal deficits, and the borrowing program of the government, the next on the list is the fiscal responsibility of the government. As a part of the fiscal responsibility of the government, we will discuss the Fiscal Responsibility and Budget Management Act 2003. This topic falls under the Indian economy and issues relating to planning, mobilization of resources, growth, development, and employment. What is the Fiscal Responsibility and Budget Management Act? Fiscal Responsibility and Budget Management Act is based on Article 292 of the Constitution of India. According to the Article 292 of the Constitution, the Parliament gets the power to limit the borrowing by the Government of India upon the security of Consolidated Fund of India. This Act establishes financial discipline to reduce the fiscal deficit, increase the planned expenditure, reduces the amount of borrowings, meets consumption from government's own fiscal resources, leaves the RBI with autonomy. It is considered as one of the major legal steps in India towards fiscal consolidation. New Zealand is the first country to implement the Fiscal Responsibility Act in 1994. Similarly, Charter of Budget Honesty in Australia and Code for Fiscal Stability in the United Kingdom were implemented. This act is necessary to make sure that the government did not borrow beyond rational limits. According to the Act, borrowing for consumption has to be brought to zero gradually and only borrowing for asset creation is allowed. The Fiscal Responsibility and Budget Management Bill was introduced in the Parliament in 2000 by the Atal Bihari Vajpayee government by the then Finance Minister Yashwant Sinha. The bill was approved by the Cabinet in 2003 and became effective from July 2004. The Fiscal Responsibility and Budget Management Act 2003 aims to make the Indian fiscal management system work with transparency. It aims to maintain the fiscal stability in India and to provide the Reserve Bank of India with the flexibility to deal with the problem of inflation in India and to introduce equal dividing of India's debts over the years. All the above mentioned targets were to be completed by 2008 and 2009. But due to the global Great Recession, the target completion was disturbed. In Budget 2018 and 19, as per the Act, the Centre has to limit the fiscal deficit to 3% of the country's GDP by March 31, 2021. No target has been set for revenue deficit and the government debt should be limited to 40% of the GDP by 2024 and 25. This act made it compulsory to introduce 3 types of statements in the Union Budget annually along with the annual financial statement and the demand for grants. They include Macroeconomic Framework Statement, Medium-Term Fiscal Policy Statement, and the third one is the Fiscal Policy Strategy Statement. In 2012, the Act was amended to make sure that another document is to be submitted in the Parliament immediately after the budget session after submitting the above 3 documents. And this is the 4th document named as Medium Term Expenditure Framework Statement. This statement presents a set of targets that are reviewed periodically that can be extended for a period of 3 years for 5 specific fiscal indicators, which include revenue deficit, effective revenue deficit, fiscal deficit, tax to GDP ratio, total outstanding debt as a percentage of GDP at the end of the year. Borrowing from the Reserve Bank of India through monetization is permitted in exceptional cases like natural disasters and calamities. This Act provides for applying an escape clause in times of emergency or calamity or national security. There is no particular mention of the word escape clause in the Act, but it is mentioned in the FRBM Review Committee. An escape clause means a provision in any law or contract that gives an option to the parties involved to deviate from the main path for a reason. Under Section 4(2) of the FRBM Act, using this escape clause, the government can deviate from the fiscal deficit targets. This escape clause makes the government flexible to act upon the fiscal deficit in times of emergency. This clause can be utilized only in exceptional cases to ensure there is no misuse of such provisions and to keep a check on the deviation. Let's see the amendments and committees on Fiscal Responsibility and Budget Management Act 2003. As we already discussed, in 2012, the Act was amended to introduce the fourth document named as Medium Term Expenditure Framework Statement. In 2013, the government introduced the concept of an effective revenue deficit. Effective revenue deficit is equal to revenue deficit minus grants to the states for creation of capital assets. To review the FRBM Act 2003, in 2016, the government has set up a committee under the chairmanship of N.K. Singh. This committee's main objective is to review the Act so far and suggest any necessary changes as per the changing times. This committee recommended that the government should set the fiscal deficit target of 3% of GDP up to March 31, 2020. And then the government has to cut down the fiscal deficit target to 2.8% in 2020 and 21 and further down to 2.5% by 2023. In 2017, the committee opined that the provisions relating to the escape clause in the Act are not transparent and can be misused. And in 2018, the Fiscal Responsibility and Budget Management Act was amended, giving out 3 conditions to apply the escape clause. Those 3 conditions include: first is during the times of national security, acts of war, any national calamities, the collapse of agriculture, the reasons severely affecting the farm output and incomes. The second is the structural reforms in the economy that have a great influence on the fiscal consequences. And the third is a great decrease in the real output growth of a minimum of 3% points below the average for the last 4 quarters. This amendment to the Act also mentions that even by using the escape clause, the deviation from the predefined fiscal deficit target must not exceed 0.5 percentage points in a year. As we already learned in the class of fiscal consolidation, that government in the present budget deviated from the path set by the FRBM Act. We can say that in the present budget, the government made use of the escape clause provision in the FRBM Act to move away from fiscal consolidation. In this budget, the government applied the escape clause under the second condition of economic reforms with great influence on economic consequences as a result of the economy hit by the COVID pandemic. In 2018, the FRBM framework was amended and the target of the revenue deficit was removed to the funding for the flagship programs like Ujjwala Saubhagya schemes. But the criticism is that all the borrowings can be used for the consumption if there is no target to bring the revenue deficit to zero. By the enactment of the FRBM Act, there will be an institutional framework that binds the government to work towards the fiscal consolidation, which requires both the central and state governments working together to balance the budget. This is about the Fiscal Responsibility and Budget Management Act 2003 as a part of fiscal consolidation. Please subscribe to my channel. Also like, share and comment. Thank you. Have a great time.